Chapter 4, Fierce Intention. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, chief priests, and teachers of the law, and that he must be killed, and on the third day be raised to life. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. "Never, Lord," he said, "this shall never happen to you." Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the things of God, but the things of men." Hold on now. This doesn't sound very playful. What are we to make of the sudden mood changes that erupt from Jesus like thunder from a clear sky? If your children acted this way, you'd send them to their rooms. Whatever we have here, we certainly don't have a man of mild emotion or two-dimensional passivity. For some reason, we keep forgetting that Jesus is operating in enemy territory. We project into the gospel stories a pastoral backdrop, the quaint charm of a Middle Eastern travel brochure, right? Picturesque villages, bustling markets, smiling children, and Jesus wandering through it all like a son come home from college. We forget the context of his life and his mission. His story begins with genocide. The massacre of the innocents? Herod's attempt to murder Jesus by ordering the systematic execution of all young boys around Bethlehem. I've never seen this included in a creche scene. Who could bear it? You must picture ethnic cleansing as the 20th century saw in Bosnia, Rwanda, Burma. Atrocity. The ground soaked with blood of children who 5 minutes earlier were laughing and playing. We cannot understand his actions nor taste the richness of his personality until we set them within their context. The man is operating deep behind enemy lines. This colors his extraordinary movements across the pages of the Gospels and helps to strip away that benevolent religious fog that continues to creep into our reading. It also gives depth and poignancy to moments of self-disclosure, such as, the Son of Man has no place to lay his head, because he was hunted. But is it not truer to say that he is the hunter? As Jesus steps out from behind those 30 years of almost total obscurity into the task set before him, both men and demons begin to feel his fierce intention. And then comes the thunderstorm at the temple. The Passover of the Jews was near, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple, he found people selling cattle, sheep and doves, and the money changers seated at their tables. Making a whip of cords, he drove all of them out of the temple, both the sheep and the cattle. He also poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. He told those who were selling the doves, "Take these things out of here. Stop making my Father's house a marketplace." His disciples remembered that it was written, "Zeal for your house will consume me," from John chapter 2. In 2 verses, he empties the temple, a report that reads like the crack of a bullwhip. But take the action slowly. First, Jesus observes the shenanigans, and it makes him furious. And then he takes the time to make a weapon. Where did he get these cords? That took some looking around. Having found them, he had the patience and forethought to weave them together effectively to make a usable whip. He knows what it takes to move large, sedentary cattle and self-righteous profiteers. There's time enough here to cool off if this is merely an outburst of anger. But no, this is a planned and sustained aggression, particularly unsettling for pacifists. Following the flow of the text, it then says he used that whip to drive all of them out of the temple, both the sheep and the cattle. The livestock would have been kept in some sort of corral. They would have been standing around for hours, languid, sleepy. An angry man flying upon them with a whip would ignite panic, mass panic. Animals feed upon each other's fear in seconds. Picture cattle and sheep running for their lives, crashing down the corrals, their hooves sliding frantically on the tiles, making them even more desperate. We have a stampede here. And then it says he poured out the coins of the money changers and sent their tables tumbling. The money changers, think men who make their living through extortion, would have been seated at those tables. How easy is it to move carefully and quickly from a sitting position while removing your legs from the table that is being overturned in front of you? More panic. Meanwhile, the coins. Jesus doesn't permit them to gather their money and move off in an orderly fashion. He dumps the coins, scatters them. This is explosive. You've probably had a small handful of change fall off a counter, right? They erupt off the floor in every direction like a jar of marbles. Imagine the chaos of hundreds and hundreds of coins erupting off those stone floors. And now, layer it all together, okay? The animals would have panicked in every direction. Their keepers running after them, shouting, trying to get control, which only incinerates the panic. Add the greedy money changers scrambling around on the ground, grasping at their careening coins. Imagine the noise, the bellowing of frightened livestock mingled with the crashing of corrals, tables, coins, the angry shouts of the incensed men. Over this, the shouts of Jesus. It is absolute pandemonium. Someone screaming fire in a casino would not be far from the reality. Now, could a small, unintimidating figure accomplish such a sustained riot? To pull off driving all from the temple area would require more than a few seconds and repeated blows. This is a sustained assault. If a frail man with a meek voice tried this, he'd be log-jammed. Jesus is a locomotive, a juggernaut. For all intensive purposes here, he is the bull in the china shop. This is our Jesus. But is this the Jesus of our worship songs? The Jesus we teach little boys about? The religious fog sneaks in to obscure Jesus with lines comparing him to a rose trampled on the ground. Helpless, lovely Jesus. Vegetarian, pacifist, tranquil. Oh wait, that was Gandhi, not Jesus. Really, can you picture Gandhi or Buddha storming into the polling place of a local election, shouting, overturning tables, sending the participants fleeing? Now throw a small carnival into the mix, which they also need to rout. Impossible. Whoever did this would have to be really committed to clear the building. Fierce and intentional. This is a breathtaking quality, especially when compared to our present age, where doubt masquerades as humility, passivity cloaks as rest, and emasculated indecision poses as laid-back enlightenment. Look at him before Lazarus' tomb. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. This expression, deeply moved in spirit and troubled, is unhelpfully vague. I'm deeply moved when someone remembers my birthday. An Oxford Don who loses his notes is troubled. We're not even close to the true nature of his mood yet. The root of the Greek word here means to snort in anger, like a war horse. Peterson therefore translates it, a deep anger welled up within him. Yes, that's better. Of course it did. This is the Prince of Life, who came that we may have life. What do you suppose his personal attitude is toward death? And here the death of a close friend? I hate death. I think I hate it more than anything else in all the world. Jesus has mighty strong feelings about it too. When it says deeply moved, it doesn't mean someone had to catch his arm and help him toward the casket Jesus overcome. Okay, something fierce is rising up in him. A second round of this war horse anger wells up. Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. "Take away the stone," he said. "But, Lord," said Martha, "by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days." Then Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the power of God?" So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you've heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe you sent me. And when he had said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. Oh, to have heard this command, heard the mightiness in his voice. John uses the word loud to describe it. He uses this very same word to describe the ferocity of a storm that nearly sank their boat. Apparently, Jesus' command here reminded John of the intensity of a storm. Jesus doesn't ask Lazarus to come out. He doesn't suggest that he do. He commands him to life with the rumble of thunder and the crack of lightning. Obediently, Lazarus comes hopping out like a mummy. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped in strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. Jesus finishes his business here very businesslike, with the order to take off the grave clothes, let him go, like a hostage negotiator who has just freed a victim. Oh, Jesus could be soft, and he certainly was humble, but his fierce intentionality is riveting to watch.